The cold, unforgiving grip of the Appalachian night was a familiar companion, but this time, it felt different. It was a tangible presence, a suffocating blanket woven with shadows and a primal, unsettling silence that pressed in on all sides. The only sound was the frantic thumping of my own heart against my ribs, a drumbeat of pure terror echoing in the vast, ancient woods. I wasn't just lost, I was hunted. And I knew, with a horrifying certainty that chilled me to the bone, that whatever was out there, it wasn't human. My name is Jackson, and I'm 36 years old. I'd always considered myself a rational man, grounded in logic and the observable world. I spent my life as a cartographer, mapping the very wilderness that now held me captive, scoffing at local legends and campfire tales of mythical beasts. The Appalachian Mountains, with their serene beauty and rugged trails, were my sanctuary, my escape from the mundane. But that was before. Before the howls. Before the blood. Before it. It began subtly, a whisper on the wind, a fleeting shadow at the periphery of my vision. I was on a solo expedition, charting a particularly remote section of forest known as Blackwood Hollow, a place locals avoided with an almost superstitious dread. My initial goal was to update some outdated topographical maps, a task I'd done countless times. The first few days were uneventful, filled with the usual sounds of chirping crickets, rustling leaves, and the distant cry of a hawk. I set up my camp near a winding creek, the kind of spot where you could almost believe you were the only soul for 100 miles. Then came the disappearances. Not just of animals, though deer carcasses, stripped clean and left in gruesome displays, became an increasingly common and disturbing sight. No, it was people. Hikers, hunters, even a couple of seasoned park rangers. The official explanations were bear attacks or lost in the wilderness, but the hushed whispers around the few general stores I passed through spoke of something else, something far more sinister. They spoke of a beast, a thing that walked on 2 legs and 4, with eyes that glowed in the darkest night. I dismissed it as local folklore, the product of isolated minds and too many lonely nights. How wrong I was. The shift in the atmosphere was palpable. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen dread. The woods, once a source of comfort, now felt like a labyrinth designed to trap me. Animals, usually bold and curious, were now silent, their absence more unsettling than any presence. It was as if every living creature held its breath, waiting. One evening, as twilight bled into a moonless night, I heard it for the first time. A guttural roar, deep and primal, tore through the stillness. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a wolf. It was something else entirely, a sound that spoke of ancient hunger and terrifying power. I froze, my hand instinctively reaching for the hunting knife on my belt, a useless gesture against whatever had made that sound. The roar was followed by a chilling, ragged breathing, close enough to send shivers down my spine. I extinguished my campfire, plunging my small clearing into absolute darkness, and scrambled into my tent, zipping it shut with trembling fingers. I lay there, heart pounding, listening, waiting. The sounds continued for what felt like hours, heavy thumps, rustling in the undergrowth, and then, a faint, sickening crunch. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying for the dawn. The next morning, driven by a morbid curiosity and a desperate need to understand, I ventured out. Near the edge of my camp, partially obscured by a thicket of blackberry bushes, I found it. A deer, its body mangled beyond recognition, its neck twisted at an unnatural angle. But it wasn't the sheer brutality that turned my stomach, it was the tracks. Enormous paw prints, far larger than any wolf or bear I had ever seen, interspersed with faint, elongated prints that looked disturbingly like human feet. The claw marks on the trees nearby were deep, gouged into the thick bark as if by razor-sharp knives. This was no ordinary predator. Fear, cold and relentless, began to set in. I packed my camp with a speed born of panic, determined to leave Blackwood Hollow behind. But as I hiked, a new sensation began to prickle at the back of my neck. I was being watched. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, made me jump. The feeling grew stronger with each passing hour, a palpable pressure, as if unseen eyes were boring into my back. I walked until my legs ached, pushing myself harder than ever before, but the sense of pursuit never wavered. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, I stumbled upon an old, abandoned logger's cabin. It was derelict, leaning precariously, but it offered the illusion of shelter. I barricaded the door with fallen timbers, hoping the rotting wood would provide some defense. Night fell, bringing with it a renewed terror. I huddled in a corner of the cabin, my rifle clutched tightly in my hands, its weight a meager comfort. The air outside grew thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the chirping of crickets, which suddenly stopped. Then came the scratching. Faint at first, a light rasping against the outer wall, then growing bolder, louder, dragging claws tearing at the aged wood. My breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't a bear trying to get in. This was intelligent, deliberate. A low growl vibrated through the cabin walls, a sound that bypassed my ears and went straight to my bones. I pressed myself further into the corner, my eyes wide with terror, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The scratching stopped, replaced by a series of heavy thuds, like something large impacting the side of the cabin. Splinters flew as a section of the wall near the window gave way with a sickening crack. Through the gaping hole, I saw it. A towering silhouette against the faint starlight, a hulking mass of darkness. Its eyes, two burning embers, pierced the gloom, locking onto mine. This was the black scary werewolf of the legends, but no legend could capture the sheer, mind-numbing horror of its reality. It wasn't a sleek, mythical creature, it was a grotesque abomination. Its fur was matted and dark, almost black, shaggy and unkempt, caked with what looked like dried mud and something darker, more ominous. Its snout was elongated, filled with rows of jagged, yellowed teeth that glistened in the faint light. Its ears were torn, its body lean and muscular, with powerful limbs that seemed to ripple with raw, untamed strength. This thing was pure, unadulterated evil, a creature of nightmare made flesh. It didn't speak, it merely snarled, a low, rasping sound that promised nothing but pain and a brutal end. I fired my rifle, the deafening roar echoing in the confined space, but the creature barely flinched. The bullet seemed to glance off its thick hide, eliciting only a deeper snarl. It lunged, its massive clawed hand tearing through the opening, swiping blindly. I ducked, the wind of its passage ruffling my hair. Panic seized me. There was no fighting this thing, only running. I burst out of the cabin's back door, scrambling into the dense undergrowth, not caring about the thorns tearing at my clothes. The creature was right behind me, its heavy thudding footsteps shaking the very ground. I ran blindly through the forest, roots and rocks snagging at my feet, the cold night air burning my lungs. The howls began then, a series of mournful, blood-curdling cries that seemed to tear at the fabric of the night itself. They weren't just howls, they were a declaration of ownership, a promise of my impending doom. I ran for what felt like an eternity, the forest a blur of shadows and terror. I stumbled, falling hard, my head hitting a rock with a sickening thud. Darkness threatened to consume me, but the fear, raw and potent, forced me back to consciousness. I pushed myself up, my vision swimming, and stumbled onward. I came to a small clearing, the moonlight filtering through a break in the canopy, illuminating a treacherous path along a sheer cliff face. Below, a roaring river churned, a dizzying drop. It was a dead end. The black scary werewolf emerged from the tree-line, its eyes glowing with a predatory glee. It advanced slowly, deliberately, savoring the moment. Its breath, hot and foul, washed over me. I backed away, my foot slipping on the loose shale. This was it. The end. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the inevitable, for the tearing claws, the crushing jaws. But instead, there was a deafening roar, not from the creature, but from the cliff face. A massive rockslide, triggered by the creature's heavy steps, began to cascade down. The ground beneath me gave way. I screamed, a pathetic sound lost in the thunderous roar of falling rock and earth. I plunged downwards, the world spinning around me, the river rushing up to meet me. Just before the darkness claimed me entirely, I caught a final glimpse of the black scary werewolf, standing at the edge of the now collapsing cliff, its eyes still burning, an indifferent, ancient evil. The cold, dark water swallowed me whole, and the last thing I felt was the crushing embrace of the river, pulling me down into the abyss, an end as terrifying and inevitable as the creature that had hunted me.